So now we're on the World Cup. We're on to starting to just go to the highest of levels. Was there ever any place in you that was imposter syndrome, or I'm not going to be able to do this? Was there ever a self doubt that you had to quell in some way?
Um, not at the beginning, honestly. I think I was so gung ho and so trying to get there that I just didn't really have time to think about,
Mm,
I'm not this person, I can't be this person. I was just so intent that I was that person. I had this kind of foolish belief that I was gonna be. I don't think it was until actually I started having success that that imposter syndrome started creeping up, which is really
mm,
interesting to me. And I feel like that has happened in my life outside of diving as well. It's not until I'm actually good at something that then I start to doubt myself. Am I really supposed to do this? Am I really good at this? Can I really do more? So I don't think I've ever been asked that question, but I know very clearly that that happened after I began to have success. Is that
mm,
weird?
mm. Oh, no, I don't think it's weird at all. I think it happens to many of us. We get so honed in on what we want that once we finally get there or we get something, then can we keep it up?
Right.
And it happens at different levels, different plateaus, and yours just happened to, you were already at that high level when it happened. I think that's
Mhm.
that's that's true of a lot of people. I remember listening to a podcast or watching that Netflix documentary, or no, Amazon. I watched on Amazon Free Solo, that
Oh,
movie with Alex Honnold and the climbing, and people were asking him about what distracts him, and do you think about these challenges and posses? He's like, no, I'm just up there and I'm doing what I do,
mm,
and that sounds like what you just described. And it wasn't until later that you started
mm,
to think about it where that set in. So,
right.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
get the view of that mountaintop view, and you're like, wow, this is great. How do I stay up here? How do I get to the next peak? Or how do you, or and then you start wondering, like, was it a fluke? You start asking those questions too, like, did I really earn this? Was it an accident? Could I, can I succeed? It's funny the doubts that creep in, but I guess because your attention shifts, right? When you're trying to get there, you're so full force into this mindset and momentum to get you there. Once you get there,
mhm,
that shifts, and it becomes like some people go into meets too, like they've done really well, or even, and I felt this, I guess, the first time I won like a preliminary round, and I'm going into the finals, and there's suddenly this pressure because you're used to being the underdog and chasing people, but suddenly when you have the lead, you get into this scared mindset of like, I don't want to lose the lead, when in reality you can't lose it. You still have to go out and win. Like, nobody's won yet, you still have to go out and win again. But it's like, it's
mhm.
weird how your mind can play those tricks on you, and it shouldn't change, but it does, because it's a different perspective that you've never seen before.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what learning lessons that we might learn from an Olympic champion who has been to that place and then started to see some of those doubts. And what might be some mindset, or just I just start with learning. Is anything you've learned there that may be able to serve
Oh
us?
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think the biggest way out of that is to keep setting goals and to keep reaching for something more. So, after I won the Olympics, it was like, well, what now? Because I'm not done diving, but like I just did everything I'd ever dreamed of since I was an 8-year-old kid. Like, so what's left? But, I think it was, to me, it became a challenge of, yeah, I want to win gold again, but I also want to raise my degree of difficulty. And I wanted to find out how far I could push myself. How good could I be for myself, not for medals, but like, how hard of dives can I do for the highest scores? Like, how far can I push that envelope and really see what I'm capable of? And that kind of really became, and it took me a while to figure that out. Like, I had other goals for meets and things along the way, but really pushing that envelope is what kind of drove me through the next two Olympic games. And, in 2008, I was doing dives that only a handful of men were doing, and no other women were doing the complete list of dives that I was doing. And after 2008, the degree of difficulty for women dropped back off. And everybody like went back down and started doing these way easier dives. And I mean, I came back after a 10-year retirement to dive again, and I could do my list from 2004, and it was still more competitive than what a lot of the girls were doing. And so it's really interesting to see when you push yourself, you're trying to pave your own path, but what you don't realize is you're making this path for all these other people to follow in your footsteps. And people were doing that. They were trying to keep up, they were trying to follow me. And then when I was done, they were like, well, I don't know what to do now. To kind of like, they weren't sure how to make their own way. So it's really interesting
Mhm.
looking back on that, and how what you do actually impacts other people even when you're not aware of it.
Hmm. Yeah, well, for you, specifically for you, you're at the top of your game. You are the spotlight's always on you. All the competitors are looking at you and want to be you. So, in addition to the pressure that the spotlight and the media have on you, you put it on yourself. So there's all of this to deal with, and then there's everything else in life. So I'm curious, what was challenging for you in that time when you were reigning Olympic gold medal champion? What was hard there? Anything in life that was challenging for you? What was that for you, Laura?
It was the pressure I put on myself. I mean, because you can have all the pressure in the world from every other source, but really it's what you take. You don't have to agree again with anybody else's ideas for you. You take those things on yourself. And I instead of having certain goals, sometimes I had expectations, and I think there's a difference there that we have to be cautious of. I like to tell people it's great to have these goals, but your expectations aren't that end result, because the expectations are more like there's a feeling that's associated with it, right? Like you get this feeling when you're on the top of the podium, a feeling when people are so excited for you, and you have that feeling, and then you expect it the next time, but it doesn't quite hit you the same way. It's not enough. You know what I mean? Like my first opening ceremonies at the Olympic Games was so amazing and I was blown away. But by my third one, I was like, I mean, this is cool, but it didn't have the drama for me. It wasn't as wow. I was just like, been there, and it's really sad to say that. But when you've done it so many times, it can lose that kind of luster a little bit. So when we have expectations on ourselves, and we want things to go a certain way, or we want to feel a certain way, we want people to feel a certain way about us, we're always going to be disappointed. So I like to be very goal oriented, and my expectations are the integrity with which I shoot after those goals. That I will show up every day. I will give everything I've got. I'm not just going to say I'm going to try hard. I'm literally going to give everything I have. I will do all the things, and so it's more of my expectations are how I am working my plan out to achieve my goal. So it's kind of a hard distinction sometimes for people to make, but I think it's really good to be aware of, because the expectations, when you put those on your goals, it becomes really, you get distracted from it and you're not really looking at your goals anymore. You're trying to look for that feeling.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
I'm curious. Uh, what might be something that uh, an Olympic gold medal athlete goes through at the Olympics that would be surprising or shocking or amazing to someone who has no idea what's actually happening in the 24 hours or the 48 hours leading up to your first event? What's happening that we wouldn't know about that would shock us? I'm curious.
It would shock you. I don't know anything's really shocking. Again, it's like, and it's the intensity that you put on yourself
Hmm.
or don't put on yourself, but it's the realization that there's a culmination of 4, 8, 10 years more that you have been working for this one moment. And like diving, one dive lasts about 2 seconds. And so an entire list of dives, like 8 or 10 dives, is going to be, you're like 15 seconds of performing. Your whole life is culminating to these tiny little moments. And that can be a lot of weight. But at the same time, when you know why you're doing it, it kind of takes some of that weight off and you're focused more on that why, and I think having a why is really
Mm,
important. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning when you don't want to be there. It's what pushes you through when you're in pain or you're not sure if you can make it. It gives you that extra, bit of courage, because it's not always just about yourself or your end goal. But yeah, there's an intensity there that's like no other for sure. But then after, there's also a drop. And a lot of people don't see that, but there's a depression that a lot of athletes go through after an Olympic Games, whether you did well or not. Like I said, it's
mhm,
all these years of work and dedication and determination and intensity on this one moment. And good, bad, or indifferent how you do, it's over. And so there's
mm.
this like drop of adrenaline, and what do you do with that, and who am I? And so it's just the weirdest thing. I've had great Olympics, I've had terrible Olympics, but I always had that little slump after. We would call it like the post-Olympic blues. And so trying to
Mm,
figure out and walk that out is really tough. And a lot of athletes don't talk about it. So some don't know that it's coming. So it's really good for people who've been through that to kind of give a heads up to that next generation coming, that like, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel all the feels afterward. It's just a letdown period and you will move past it, but it hits some people right away. some people have like a honeymoon period of 6 months and then it hits. And so, yeah, it's kind of a wild ride.
How did you deal with it the most recent time after your most recent Olympics?
So 2008 was my last Olympics, and
Mhm.
that did not end well. I was kind of injured in the finals, and so I think I was eighth or ninth. And that was disappointing, and then that was the end of my career too. So there was a lot of just, oh, that sucked. That's not how you want to go out. You want to go out in a blaze of glory. You want to go out on top. And so to have that kind of culmination at the end, that was a real big letdown. And we were ready to move on and start a family. We'd been married about 6 years at that point, and I was 30 years old. I was like kind of ready to move on. Okay, it's time to be a mom, and that wasn't happening either. So I was very lost for a while, and trying to rectify the end of that and not being able to begin something else. And so there was a long period where I was just trying to figure out who I was without the sport, without being a mom. Like it was a tough journey, but it helped me looking back, realizing that, okay, I didn't get a gold medal in Beijing like I'd wanted to, but my goals were to push myself and find out how hard of dives I could do to the very best of my ability. And at the trials, just a month before the Olympic Games, I had done the hardest list of dives a woman's ever done. And I did almost every single dive in my list for tens and went this huge score that would have probably been on top of the podium at the games. And so it stinks it didn't happen at the right moment, but I can feel a lot of completion and satisfaction that I pushed the absolute limit and did things that people didn't think I was capable of, and I did it well. And I always will have that, and that felt really good. And so, not to justify a bad ending, but to find satisfaction within what I was able to accomplish. Because you always
Amazing.
have to shoot for big goals, but you're not going to hit them all. But it doesn't mean the pursuit wasn't worth it.